G'day guys, welcome back to another chat with Ray. So I'm Ray, and today we're going to chat about transmissions, automatic transmissions obviously. Now, a lot of vehicles these days, a lot of your new cars, even a lot of older vehicles, people are starting to tow with automatics. I worked for quite a few years in the automatic game, in an automatic specialist place, so I did learn sort of a lot about, I learned a lot in general there, but I did learn a lot about what makes autos fail, why people are doing the wrong thing, and just how to prevent catastrophic issues and big expenditures that you really don't need. You'd rather be out holidaying. Now, there's less than a handful of main things that are going to destroy your auto. Heat is a big one, water is another one, gear selection is another really important one, and maintenance. I'm just going to sort of touch on each one. I don't want to really go too long and too in depth and bore you guys, but I do want to go in depth enough that just to get people to really understand the importance of all this stuff with autos. We have run across quite a few people on the road that have blown up their autos, that are still going but doing the wrong thing and on their way to blowing it up. So we'll start with the easy one, and that's just gear selection. It's basically the same thing across the board, manual or auto. Don't tow in overdrive. Overdrive is basically your weakest gear in your transmission. It's always going to be the weakest link. You should always tow in your 1-to-1 gear. So if that's a 5-speed auto, you don't actually have a 1-to-1, but you have one that's really close, which is usually 4th. But always just jump on Google or ring your manufacturer and find out what's the closest to 1-to-1 in your transmission. And that also, it'll bring your revs up along the highway, it'll actually save you a bit of fuel, it'll get your engine up into its torque range, and you'll find it's got a lot more power. And you'll also, prolong the life of your gearbox a lot. So gear selection is very important. Always tow in your 1-to-1 or closest to 1-to-1 gear. So that's probably the first one. Second one is maintenance. Now, every single automatic transmission that's made has to be serviced. Despite what your manual says, despite what people will tell you, it has to be serviced. Now, it won't get serviced under your general service or your factory service and that sort of stuff. You have to specify it. There's not a lot involved. It's basically a filter, oil, a pan gasket, and a visual inspection of all your cooler pipes and seals, all that sort of stuff. When I had my workshop, I used to service the transfer case in 4 drives at the same time as the transmission, but not everywhere does, so you have to specify that. Now that should be, if you're towing a van, I'd say every 15,000, not towing a van every 20,000, service your transmission. Very, very important, and use good oil. Don't use the cheapest oil because that's all they had, just use good oil, I stress that. Alright, next one is water. Now, if you've got a plastic over aluminium radiator, it's not a case of if, but it's a case of when the transmission cooler inside that radiator ruptures. Look, I wouldn't even be able to name how many blown up gearboxes I've seen due to water in the transmission, and that's all your frictions, like all your clutch plates inside the auto, they just eliminate, throw to pieces as soon as there's water involved. The big thing, which will come into when I talk about coolers, get rid of the cooler that's in your radiator, bypass it, and just go to an external air-to-air cooler. There's nothing better. There's no risk of water. You eliminate that completely because transmissions do not like water. Right, so that's 3. Let's talk about heat. Now this is a big one, really, really big one, and it's the cause of most failures. I'd say for the first step of your temperature, your auto, is get a transmission temp gauge. Whether you get one fitted, fit it yourself, however you go about it, all different brands do them. You can get digital ones. My old man's, his is digital and he loves it because he can just glance at it and see the temp straight there on the screen. If you fit it yourself, or even if someone fits it, it always goes in the line coming out of your transmission, so the hottest line. That way you've always got the hottest point on your temp gauge. But that's a must, no matter who you are, what you drive. A transmission temp gauge it's a necessity. Okay, not something you should get later, or you'll get if it's an issue. Just get one and just make it a must on your list. Following that is your transmission cooler. Now, as I said, get rid of the run in your radiator and run an air-to-air cooler. Don't go out and spend money and buy the tube and fin coolers. So they're like a 3/8 tube that runs back and forward, snakes back and forward with fins along it. They're just useless. You'll just get into more trouble. Spend the money, get a bar and plate cooler. So B&M do some good ones, Aeroflow do some really good ones. I run a TrueCool, that's what I recommend. I've fitted a lot of them. It's what I fit on my dad's car. It's what I fitted quite a few Prados at tow. The problem with the TrueCool that we run is they are large and they don't fit on a lot of Japanese cars, but they do a smaller cooler, obviously. But with a cooler, always fit the biggest cooler you can fit possibly. The biggest you can get in there, put it in there. I'll just quickly show you the one on the Jeep. Like I said, I fitted these in Prados and everything. So I'm not sure if that really shows up, but basically it's the full width of my grill, and it's I think they're about 1.5 inches thick. They're really good coolers. They run AN fittings, so all your push lock fittings or braid, whatever you want to do. B&M do some really good ones. So temperature comparison, I used to run 2 B&M coolers on this, and then I switched to the TrueCool, big TrueCool, and I dropped by 15 degrees across the board. When I did my old man's cooler, it took a lot of convincing, because even the big TrueCool that we run was smaller than the original Jeep cooler, and I convinced and just tried to convince him that the new one would work 1,000,000 times better. And yeah, the end he came to the party and said, right, I will do it. And I think it dropped his oil temps across the board by at least minimum 20 degrees. Made a massive difference, because heat, like I said, heat kills autos. They don't like it. It fries your oil. Your converter is continuously just chopping up the oil. You need to keep it cool. A lot of cars you'll be able to fit your B&M or Aeroflow AN fitting coolers in there, but like I said, the bigger the better. If you can do a good transmission cooler, like I said, big one in there, good brand and a good temp gauge, and keep those temps down. The other way to keep it down is by getting a lockup switch. Depending on your vehicle, you can get a lockup switch installed, so you can actually command lockup in your converter manually whenever you want. Now when you're on a hill, you'll be starting to heat up going uphill. If you can flick that into lockup, your temps will just drop instantly. It's another way. And obviously, if you've got a transmission that you're capable of buying a big oversized transmission pan for, that's also another way to keep those temps down, add more fluid. So the transmission pan I run in this runs 4 litres above standard. So it's a lot more fluid in there to keep it cool. And also when you're full driving, you get a lot more fluid in your pan. My transmission temps in this, if we're pulling hard up some big long hills, I'll usually get them to pull it back to second, put it in lockup. That way it's in lockup and your temps can't climb. But if we stay in third out of lockup, we'll get up around 80. Really bad stuff, we can get to 90 if it's 40 degrees outside. But cruise along the highway, we're sitting around 60 degrees. Down in the colder weather, we're sitting around 50 degrees, which the colder the better. You don't want to really go over 100. If you're running a good synthetic oil, they can take it, but the less you do that, the better. The more you can keep it under 100, the longer that fluid's going to last. But there's some really good tips and tricks just to prolong your automatic transmission, and each one of those is a must, not like a recommendation, but a must. So transmission temp gauge, definite. Transmission cooler, definite. Like gear selection, like I said, you may have to get in touch with your manufacturer and find out which gear is your 1-to-1, or as close to 1-to-1 as possible. Just it'll help you, even your drivability. It'll stop the motor lugging, because in overdrive she's going to be lugging, chewing a bit extra fuel. Worse for the motor and not good for your gearbox. and then servicing. So keep whoever your mechanic is, or if you do your servicing yourself, just start doing your auto, make sure you keep up on that. But yeah, so I think that sort of wraps up our little chat with automatic transmissions. If you've got any questions about autos or any of that sort of stuff, shoot them below, and if you don't want to leave it below, just shoot me a message. Happy to have a chat with you about it. Like I said, I worked on autos for a lot of years, did find out a lot of little tips and tricks, and the main thing is finding out why they blow up, and why they blow up very regularly due to those issues that I spoke to you about. They're the main ones, other than common faults when it comes to the vehicle. Like, every vehicle has faults. If you think yours doesn't, then you're in denial. Everything has faults, come from the factory. So the main thing is, if something faults and breaks, don't just fix it and repair and improve it at the same time. It's even the case with autos. Like, autos are a very, very expensive thing to get rebuilt. Very. So when you do get it rebuilt, chat to your rebuilder, because you'll be able to upgrade friction, all your clutch packs, upgrade pistons, upgrade seals, upgrade line pressures. You'll be able to sort of get everything up to a towing standard, and then you'll last a lot longer, especially if you do those other things we spoke about. So I think we might leave that there. Like I said, any messages, just shoot them through. I'm happy to have a chat with you, because it is a very important thing, and we've run into so many people on the road that they don't even run a tranny cooler, and I don't understand how, and I don't understand why their mechanics aren't recommending it to them. Same with servicing. A lot of people think, oh yeah, my auto says it's filled for life. They're not. It's as simple as that. And same thing, I don't understand why people aren't getting told this, but hopefully I can give you guys some advice, and hopefully at least one or two people listen. That's the most important thing. As long as I can help someone, then I'm happy. But I think we'll call it quits for this one, and I'll see you another time for Ray's Chats.